My bad. I'm sorry. Uh, is it really 501? Because he's not working. I can't see the clock. Flag. All right. I want to get started. So the intent was for this was to try and have a discussion about the finances as we move into the process for the budget. So that way we can kind of have a more streamlined idea to eliminate any unknowns as we move forward.
Just a point of order. We do have to call the meeting to order, pledge of allegiance, and roll call, and then we'll
do it.
Okay. No worries. If you want to lead us in that.
Call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order. 5:02. Everybody stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, to the republic one nation, under God, liberty and justice. We should do a roll call.
Yeah. All right. Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yeah.
Mr. Hunt?
Yep.
Mr. Moser? Mrs. Rance?
Here.
Dr. Strasser?
Here.
Mrs. Waldron?
Here.
Dr. Weaver? Mr. Hosterman?
Here. Right.
I do not have any comments from visitors.
Thank you, Dwayne. Comments from visitors? All right. Turn it over to Mr. Harris.
All right. So as I said, the intent is to go to just kind of provide some information on the preliminary budget for 2024, 2025, help us give some guidance and try and address some potential concerns we might have as we move through it, so we don't have to worry about identifying shortages we didn't know as board members.
Yep. Okay, if I can just jump right in then. So I'm going to start with the big packet, the one that's just titled the proposed preliminary general fund budget, and to follow up with what Mr. Harris was saying. I look at this meeting as a primer for next month when we get into the bigger budget meeting where we're talking the proposed preliminary budget. This way, you guys have about 2 weeks and tonight to get a feel for what's in there prior to us even starting the discussion on the preliminary. As you guys are probably aware, we talk about the preliminary for a couple months, then we move towards proposed final. So we have a lot of time to review this, come back, and really what I love is just seeking input, feedback, questions from you guys. So when I'm making the preliminary budget that we are sharing fully, publicly posting, all of that, it has what you guys want to see in there, or I can, address the questions in a public presentation. So that way everyone knows what we're looking at, why we're doing things certain ways. So I'm going to jump to page 2. And page 2 is the proposed budget highlights. So I always start off with these because they're kind of like the things that jump out that are changes from the previous year, which is current year, 23-24, going into next year's projected budget. So the top part are expenditure impacts, and I give the estimated impact and change that you're going to see increased from this current year's budget to next year's. And if you have a question or anything, just stop. I'd be happy to answer. So the first one is the debt service principal due. We took the extra $10 million out last year to make sure that Bacher had the full renovation it deserved. The first year of that, it was just interest being paid, no principal payback. That amount is going to level out now, but we do see an increase next year from what we paid current year. So that's where you see 105, but now it's going to flatten out. We'll be able to have just about the same amount year to year, as long as we don't do any additional borrowing. That is a fixed rate, so we don't have to worry about that changing. The next line is the addition of the community fundraising position. So that is added. It's something that's been discussed at the board level for, I think, over a year now. So that position's in there, and it shows the anticipated cost for that. The next 3 lines are all special ed related. And farther into the budget, you can go specifically to the special ed cost center and see exactly where those increases hit, but they're sizable. And so I wanted to put that in there just to highlight the impact that that's going to have on the overall numbers. Dr. Bickhart, his recommendation was to add professional department heads. Dr. Bickhart, do you want to just mention briefly what those would be?
Sure. So one of the goals of a department head is to work through whether it's at a grade level and or a subject level. So you could have, when we go into the realignment next year, a K-3 by grade level, or you might have a K-3 ELA lead, K-3 math lead. The idea behind that is to support instruction, support the team, to work with the grade level so that there's a say within curriculum, but also what's very beneficial is then building level, like leadership teams. So it's developing leaders within. You know, there's a lot of models we could use with that. So that was one of the frameworks that I discussed with the team as we were looking towards next year.
Thank you. The next line is the increase in technology, software, and hardware costs. That'll be, you can look in greater detail within the tech budget cost center. But I wanted to highlight that because it does have an increase to the 600 object codes. And it is an increase from the current year. The next line is one that we're going to talk about further in a bit, but it's deferred maintenance and repairs on district-wide capital projects. So I'm going to touch on that more deeply, like I said, in a little bit. And I actually broke it out on a separate page for us to look at. But Mr. Hoffman has a lot of plans for projects that have been kind of in need of being done across the district for a few years now. The next one is cyber costs. Based on the current projected enrollment for students that we have in the program and just putting that out across the next year, unfortunately, it looks like an increase of about 100 to 120,000 for those. Now, those numbers could change if we get them to come in-house and go to our cyber program. But this is just what I'm seeing based on current numbers. We added girls wrestling, about $20,000 to add that with the cost of the coaches and benefits and benefits as in Social Security payments that we have to pay and PSERS and all that good stuff. And then the high school gym floor overhaul was also included in the athletics budget. So those are not all of the expenditure impacts, just the big ones that are maybe not routine. The revenue impacts, this is a big change in revenue. So you can look at the total amount. And I think that, you know, we should easily be able to see a large increase in the projected revenues. We had better than anticipated revenue collection in 22-23. I expect the same thing for 23-24. And with the proposed change to the basic education formula and the special education funding from the state, I am very hopeful that we will see increased revenues from the state. And I'm still being conservative. I'm always conservative with revenues, but I've pushed them much higher than I typically go because we've seen over the last year and a half. And we'll know a lot more in February when the governor gives his first budget address as to what he plans to include based off the two reports that were given by the Basic Ed Funding Commission earlier this month. We also, a big thing, the first line in the revenue impacts is actually a negative. It's a reduction in revenue. But I want to talk about that briefly. I mentioned last year that I think it might be a good idea for us to look at removing the per capita tax. I consider it a nuisance tax. It's $15 paid at face, $14.70 at discount. When people are late on their payments for that, they end up getting charged, I think, an additional $30 for it. It brings in about $75,000 to $80,000 a year for us, but it costs us $10,000 to mail them out. And then it also costs us another $1,000 or $2,000 in bank fees to collect them. And that's not including the work, the man hours that Mr. Tall has to put in to process those payments as well. So what I have for this budget is a proposal to remove that tax and instead offset it with a real estate property tax increase to eliminate that entirely, get rid of the per capita tax, but make sure we're not losing revenue from the current year's budget. And I'll show you what that evens out to in the next page coming up. Any questions on those kind of highlights over expenditures and revenues? All right. So the bottom just gives you kind of quick details on what it looks like right now. So current budget deficit is looking at $2.79 million. That's not at all uncommon for a preliminary budget. There's still a lot of work to be done to reduce that. And I do have some suggestions on ways that we can make that happen. So we'll touch on that in a moment. The next page, page 3, goes over the budget timeline. This just gives us the idea of whose presentations will be going when, because we do like to have each department do their report out on what's impacting their budget and what they're projecting for the next year. And there's also important dates that are established by the state that we have to follow as far as adoptions and advertising requirements. So I make sure that those are all listed there. Any questions on timeline?
So can I comment on the timeline? So
Yeah,
I think that's an important aspect because that's been a big discussion with the board on how that clearly articulates what's going on. So we're here, as Derek said, preliminary to discuss. February 6th, we're going to spend the entire meeting on things. We do have additional time to go over additional things in March and April as we're discussing. Just want to make sure from the group that is here, are we comfortable with that framework of timelines to make sure we're giving multiple times to go over things?
I would add to that. These are our minimum.
Minimal, right?
We can meet much more than this, but this just kind of outlines the important dates that we need to hit as we're moving through the budget process.
I think it's important to point out, like on 312 and 319, that's not the first time we can discuss special education or technology. Like it's going to be in the February 6th conversation, but they can be follow-up things that we're making sure we're clearly coming back to and articulating whatever you need.
And those presentations typically encompass more than just the budget. It's usually like a review of the current and previous year and the projections looking forward and kind of an overall, like, how are things going with that each area. So yeah, certainly we'll discuss it more than just those times. Okay, page 4, local tax impacts. So I share this every year. This year with the budget, I did a little bit differently. Typically in the past, historically, prior to me coming here, the proposed preliminary budget was always done with the max tax increase available and then kind of work back from there. It is not set up that way this year. What it's set up to do is to maintain our tax revenue from 23-24 to 24-25. So it's keeping this same tax collection revenue projection from current year to next year. Now, that doesn't mean that numbers won't change, because what we saw when I got the numbers from the counties is that we lost about $1.2 million in assessed values from Northumberland County, and we lost $3.9 million in assessed values from Union County. So what that means is to keep the same tax revenue, we have to increase the millage rates because we just lost tax assessed values. So we know that revenue is millage times the assessed values. So if we lose assessed values, we've got to increase millage to keep it the same. And with that said, I also built in the recovery from dropping the per capita tax, and that's shown on page 4. So if we maintain based on the knowledge that we're losing assessed values and that we're replacing the per capita tax, the median taxpayer for Northumberland County would see an annual tax increase of about $14.66 to their tax bill. And for Union County, the median taxpayer would see an increase of $18.46 for their yearly bill. So they would see a small increase. It's well below the 7.2% that is the max. And regarding the max, I do have those numbers on page 5, just to show everyone that if we did want to push it all the way to the highest we could possibly go, you would see a $90 increase annually for the median taxpayer in Northumberland County and $117 for the median taxpayer in Union County. And that difference between the two would net the school about $672,000 in additional revenue. So that's the space we had. We can go any increment between, the maintaining what we have now to the 7.2. We could always go 5%, 4%, whatever the board feels is necessary for this budget to work the way we want it to work. Any questions on tax impact and what we're seeing there? Okay, while I'm on the county stuff and our multi-county and how frustratingly difficult it makes it when it comes time to balancing tax revenue, I did include for everybody a frequently asked question for tax equalization. I've done this the last 3 years. We posted on the website. I'm not going to go over it right now, but it's out there. So hopefully community members can have a better understanding of why someone in Union County will have a change that's different than someone in Northumberland County and how that is formulated. We do not have a whole lot of control in that. We don't have any. We just set how much revenue we want to make. And then the equalization is going to be based on the sale values of the properties from 2 years ago. So that document goes into that. If you have questions on it, shoot me an email, give me a call, we can go over it. But it's pretty dry stuff overall.
Posted on our website.
Yes. The newest one is not yet, but it has been every year when we get the budget stuff up there, I ask Brenda to throw this up there too, so that it's in the same spot there.
These are the type of conversations that taxpayers don't really grasp, but how that works. So I think a document like this is really helpful.
That was my hope, because I would get questions about it, and so I wanted something out there that if I don't have time to sit down and talk for half an hour, at least I can say, hey, look at this, come back to me if you have a question, and hopefully I can give an answer to you that makes sense. Okay, before I move on further, any questions, any comments, concerns? Okay. Page 6, I just want to go over the total expenditures by major object. When I talk about object, everything we budget and everything we purchase gets assigned a 16-digit account code. It's the way that we can account for, who's paying for it out of our district, where is it assigned to, and it's how PDE kind of tracks our spending. Object codes basically give you like what category is it? Is it salaries and wages? Is it supplies? Is it equipment? So this is a good page to break down and see where are we spending our money. So if you look at objects 100 and 200, that's how we pay our people. It's salaries and benefits. And right now, that's at about 70% of our total budget, which is typical for us. The vast, vast majority of our money goes towards paying our people. And so what that means is, staffing is the big impact. That's when we add positions, when we take positions away, when we change positions, that's where we see the big shift in our money. The other things, supplies, maintenance projects, things like that, all very important, all, worth looking at, but it's a smaller impact overall to what we're able to accomplish for our budget when we look at those. So there's 2 areas specifically I want to highlight on this page. The first one is object 400s. If you look at the change from the previous budget, it's a huge jump. It's 54% increase from this year's budget. The reason for that is the capital projects that we have listed. So while I'm on that, I want everyone, if you could, to pull out this single sheet page that I have. And at the top, it says 24-25 capital projects. That's the list that Jeff gave me of, hey, Derek, this is what I want to see done at the district this year. So that's what's in this budget right now. Comes out to about $842,000 spread across all of our buildings in the district. What I had brought up and what I've discussed is that I would like to look at moving funds from our general fund and putting it into our capital fund. So if we do that, that money now has to purely be used for capital projects. All of these would fall under that. It pulls it out of our general fund budget, so it would lower our general fund budget by $1 million, but guarantee that that money in there is going to be used for capital projects. And then it doesn't have to be done within a year. It doesn't have to fall into the single year project scope that we work with now. It can kind of be done as needed, as necessary. And then year after year, I'd love for us to build that capital fund. Look at budgeting $500,000, $250,000, and always get in the habit of when the year ends and we have that money in our fund balance, we move it over and it stays there. Now, it's important to know that if we move the money to that capital fund, it's only coming out for cutting a check for capital projects. It's not coming out for any other reason. It can't. So we got to be very committed to, yes, we want to move this money over there. We want to commit to these projects. And once we do that, obviously, you guys as the board would determine which projects we're going to do, but we know that that money is there. It also gives us a better rate of return. We get better investment rates for those funds. So we would see growth there. But that's something that, leaving tonight, I would love for you guys to just kind of think on that. Look at this list of projects, and I would love to come back on the 6th and have a conversation of if that's something we want to do we look at reducing the expenditures on our general fund budget and move these over to capital? And part of that is going to be the discussion I have over how we finish the 22-23 year. I don't have that ready to go for tonight, but I can tell you that we had a strong year in revenues. So we do have additional money going into our fund balance that was not anticipated. So I'll give you guys all the details on that, but it's probably about $2.5 million more than I was anticipating having today than from last year when I was running the numbers. So we're in a good position. I think it's good, and the forecast is kind of bright with the potential changes to the state funding and them talking about bringing Plan Con 2.0 or other things like that would help us do these projects and have the state pay for some of them. So questions on the Object 400s? Yeah, Dr. Picard.
So I think we talked about through Jeff, through Mr. Hoffman's budget. So I think to be very clear with all of you, I am a huge proponent of this. Jeff is very guarded on, he doesn't want to expand his budget because he worries about the impact on the general taxpayer. Being clear with all of you, I am fully behind this. I believe that we need to continue to stay focused on improving our facilities. Very proud, we all are very proud of what we're doing at Bacher. As we move the elementary, we want to do those projects at White Deer to bring that up to speed for the next span of time. There are things we want to continue to do to this high school and middle school. From the moment I came in, I talked to Derek about that exact idea, that I think there should be a line item in our budget that we move the capital projects, whatever we can afford. So we're constantly planning ahead and we're not getting further behind with needs in our district. And again, I think in light of where the funding commission is and what we're seeing on the horizon, we feel confident about it. We feel confident that can be a priority when we look to the future, when we look at the new funding source, through the commission. So just want to be clear, that is not just the projects Jeff is seeing. I have been a major proponent behind the scenes that is something we need to do as a district.
And I think it simplifies some of the questions we have when we go through the bills, because essentially that would be excluded from the bills we see every month. It would be part of a capital project. So do you just want to give an example of some of the stuff we can use, like what the limits would be that we draw down, just so we know that we're not impacting the education?
Sure. Yeah. So when we're talking about capital projects and capital funds, it's permanent. It's upgrades and changes to permanent structures. So it's renovation projects, it's sidewalks, it's asphalt. It's something that has a useful life of over a year that's valued higher than $1,500. So basically, if you think of it as, are we renovating something? Are we upgrading something that's permanent and that we're going to have for multiple years? Likely going to fall under capital projects. We can get a list for next meeting of like, hey, here's exactly what they mean when they say capital projects. But that's the gist of it. It would cover all of those things listed. I specifically went through his budget and pulled out the ones that would apply to it. So if it falls in one of those categories, it's going to be covered by that. Any other questions on the Object 400s?
Derek, is this list from Jeff, is this kind of prioritized or is it just random?
I pulled it right off of his. I don't think he had a priority on it. So that would be a great, during the maintenance budget presentation, I think that would be a great thing to talk about. The other point on the total expenditures that I wanted to talk about is the Object 600s, which are supplies. That includes all supplies. It also includes our energy costs and books and technology. That had a big increase, but that is actually, a lot of that is attributed to the Object 700s. We previously were coding some of the tech supplies and tech budget to the 700 object code. In my opinion, it's more so a 600. So that was an accounting shift. And so you can see the 700s decreased by 45.8% and the 600s increased by 34.4%. So that's a big chunk. Also included in there is we need furniture for the Bacher Elementary Principal's office renovation. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all there. That being
missed.
Yeah, there is just say that it was never included in the blueprint.
In the blueprints, the Bacher office was scarcely being renovated. Scarcely. So in looking at that and analyzing that, we need to look at doing more, or it will be the eyesore as you come in.
Where are we with contingency costs? Done.
It's going to be
have contingency money left?
Yeah, we do. I think it's going to be pushing it though. When we talked about the Bacher project, we had that additional $200 million in capital committed funds. I believe we're going to tap into that. It's already going above where it is or where it has been. I'll make a note. For the 6th, I'll give you guys an update on that. I looked at it before the end of the calendar year, and I told John, hey, we're pushing it. We're getting right there. Like, it's time to, like, no more adding. Like, we need to kind of wrap this up.
There are still a few things. There are still our numbers that
the other thing
may pull reduction.
Well, the other thing too is that the maintenance budget, Jeff has found ways to reduce costs and use some of that to offset those items like that, like furniture, things like that. He has found ways to not spend in one place to make it cover for the other. And then because we got stuck with that not be like the renovations of the office, and we're stuck with that. We've got to get furniture for it. And so now we're budgeting. And it's a one-time expenditure and it's going to hit there. So that's why I wanted to make sure that you guys were aware. Because that kind of gets hidden. It just looks like it's a supply, and you think, oh, well, that's what's the supply? Like, why do we need so much in supplies for the principals? Well, it's because furniture counts as a supply, and it unfortunately jumps that line up. Other areas under the 600s that are seeing an increase. We have a big one for risers in the high school. We've talked about that. That's included in there. We have CTE had a little more in their subscriptions, like books and periodicals. It's like the 640 line. Just had more than previously. So we saw software. Yes, programs. That's exactly what it is. So necessary items, but just not one we had in the previous year. And athletics saw a jump too. So all of those are in the specific cost centers. Excuse me. So you'll be able to take a look at those and see, a little closer down. Yeah.
600 also reflect the budgeting for elementary or specified money for specials. So music has not had a specific budget before. Elementary band has not had a specific budget before. For choir instruments, how much choir instruments, all of that has been added up to 600 budget quite here.
Was it ever budgeted before? Like, is it just moved?
Which put us in a bad place to compare us with choir instruments or help a student prepare or acquire an instrument. We take the high school music budget for that. So as our elementary music program has continued to grow and it's centered in White here now, the integration, I thought it would be most appropriate for us to be getting a budget for some of those items.
So if there's no other questions on that, page 7, and so page 7 covers the expenditures. This is broken down by the cost centers. This is really just a summary of the continuation of the book. So it's just going to show you the percentage of total budget made up by each program. We'll let you guys, you can take a look at that whenever you like, but it just kind of puts it all nice and neat. And then the next page covers the revenue, and then below that you can see current deficit and where that is. Page doesn't have a page number on it. The fund balance page, which should be page 9. Oh, it does. I've just covered it up. That shows the current fund balance kind of rolling forward. So that's where I said that our fund balance, because of 22-23's performance, is greater than I expected, which is fantastic for the district. It gives us options. And it also means that we can kind of hold steady and see exactly where the state funding is going to go before we have to make any really critical, hard decisions. But it does, no matter what, we are going to want to look at after probably next month or the month after, moving those funds, like moving some funds, committing them to capital or technology. We don't want to leave a large amount of money just sitting unassigned. We actually have restrictions on that. So we'll discuss that. And that's what we do typically this year, around this time each year. So we'll have that discussion and then you guys can decide how best to utilize those. Any questions on fund balance projections? Okay. Page 10 is the debt service. It's just a historical graph for you guys and table that shows historically how much have we spent annually on our debt payments, so our bonds and notes that we've used and borrowed, compared to the rest of our expenditures. So basically how much of our debt or how much of our budget is being used to pay back debt that we owe. And you can see it's held pretty constant around 5%. It was higher back in 15, 16, 16, 17. But when I first got here, we started refinancing all the ones we had, borrowing new, and took advantage of those extremely low rates. So we got a huge amount of interest savings. And actually, it's what let us borrow $40 million and not get crushed with a huge annual payment because we took advantage of those rates. Really nothing else to talk about there. That was, I think, more critical when we were taking new money out, but I'm hoping we don't have to take any new money out for a while. I'd like to just see us pay that down. So page 11 This is going into our revenues, a little more detailed. It starts with local revenues, moves into state, and then federal. It is the last area that I want to really highlight in particular, and then I'll turn it over to you guys for any discussion and questions. But again, the first line, the 6111 current real estate tax, those are our school taxes. And so I'm highlighting that because, like I said, I wanted to, with this proposed preliminary, show we're keeping the same tax revenue from current year to new year. You'll see 23-24 budget was 12,011,000. So if you add in the 6120 and the 6141, which is the per capitas, add that together, it gives you about 12,070,000. I put 12,073,000, so we're actually a little under. We would actually be getting a little less revenue, but they're projections. You know, we may bring in less. But that's another area where I'm highlighting the proposed drop of the per capita tax and then maintaining the current revenues for the school tax. But again, there's a lot of discussion still to be had on what we want to see as far as, you know, local taxes go. So those are the big, broad, high overview things I wanted to point out and discuss. For me, I think that's a great place for us to start. When we come back on February 6th, I'm going to have, you know, a full presentation, PowerPoint slides that will recap the 22-23 audit and financials, and then roll right into the proposed preliminary budget. So there may be some overlap with what we talked about tonight, but the plan is to have a bit of a bigger crowd to talk about it there. And also, should questions come up over the next week, I can adjust that presentation. So like if there's something where like, man, Derek, you really didn't touch on this and I think it's important, let me know and I'll get a slide in there to discuss it. So.
Derek, I have a revenue question. Where are we on is it the LURA project? LURA property?
Which one? The GAF?
It's the KOZ property.
So we have KOZ, Milton,
Yeah.
and then in the industrial park, which we're nearing the end of it. It was a 10-year program with declining returns. So it's.
Chris, do you remember what did that happen?
Some of them are out of it, but then there's new ones that come in with the we're pinpointing sets.
I would say that we're going to see a chunk of revenue come in from that in the next couple of years.
And the additions over, I still remember, not factored in because it's stalled.
Yeah,
when
so
they do the additions, they do not get. Remember,
correct. Yep. So GAF still has the reduction. That one's the LERTA. They're still getting that LERTA reduction. That is changing though. It's weird. It's not too long before we're going to start seeing that. Now they did do a tax appeal, and that's part of the reason why we see the drop in assessed values. They won their appeal. You know, we had our attorney go out and mediate that, and we came to a compromise, but the compromise was not entirely favorable for us. Their appraisal came in where they wanted it, not where we wanted it. We got our own appraisal, still didn't come in where we wanted it. In fact, ours came in lower, so we just ignored it and threw it away. And so, you know, we saw that, but when I saw that, I'm like, okay, like to Brett's point, we're losing the assessed value. We're going to get back the higher tax rate soon. Milton Borough did bring back up to me wanting to do alerta for alerta for downtown Milton, for the Milton Borough. I told them that they need to just bring the information and talk to you guys, and I've not heard again from them for 5 months. So I just said, no, bring it to us. We'll talk about it, but until that time, we're not doing anything. I'm not just going to jump on board. I will give you guys. I made a note. I'll give you guys an update on the alerta. I'll get the actual numbers. I'll pull the contract so that way.
Yeah, because if I remember, it kicked in like year 7. We started to see a percentage.
Yeah, it wasn't a full time.
Then 10 years was the 100% or
I'll
here's where we're at.
give you an update on. Yeah.
the steel mill, remember, was restructured, and then it was there vacant 2 years, and then Pinpoint come in, and they went to the county, went to the borough, and I came to the district last. They got the approval, so they got the free.
Yeah,
they're on the ride. That was.
So just to make sure that everyone is aware of what we're talking about, KOZ is a Keystone Opportunity Zone. It's a targeted area where there are properties that are less than ideal, that maybe aren't being used, vacant, things like that. They get a tax break to put their business there, invest in the business. They have to put their money into improving the property. And if they continue to do that, then their improvements go tax-free until the end of the agreement. So basically, they get to put money in, invest it, instead of having to pay taxes. But then when the KOZ runs out, then we get to assess on the full value. So it's a short-term loss of money for us, but the goal would be more people working in our district, so we get that money, and then at the end, a higher assessed property value. So it should be, if everything works out the way it's supposed to, short-term pain for long-term gain.
Something like ACF?
Similar, yeah. I don't know that building is in the KOZ. I'd have to look.
The problem with that though is when they did in Broad years ago and they sold it in the chamber, there's no guarantee they would take some money. They would put that and earmark it if they left early,
right,
to not create enough jobs.
Right.
So there is a negative.
There is.
And the housing modular down there moved out, so it was right there.
Yep.
So you lost all the jobs. And it was suggested to take money, earmark it, put an escrow fund. If they don't fulfill, then you give it back to the district. But that never moved forward. The chamber would support that.
Gotcha. So I think good intentions, but may not always work out ideally. And then Alerta is a similar thing. It's a tax reduction for a certain period of time for business growth. Okay. I mean, it's open for you guys. I like I said, I wanted to get this in your hands to have a chance to look at it, to discuss it, to follow up, to give you guys whatever you need. Yeah.
So, well, the whole thought is to be able to actually have numbers to review as we move through the process, so we kind of see what the district's looking at and what we face for impacts and investments for the district.
Again, go.
I was just going to jump into some of the expenditures listed. I think the addition of department heads is really kind of crucial. I've been a proponent of that for years. Working in a department where really K-12 without designated leadership was a struggle. So I think I'm supportive of departments, as long as their roles are defined, what their purpose is.
Another comment, looking at the community fundraising position, we have been meeting with what was the capital campaign. We're kind of reestablishing that. We will be coming back with additional information to the board on how does that all come together. I had actual conversation with Attorney Wiley today. He was involved when Williamsport did this up there, how they handled it with their foundation. So I think he is going to actually be a great resource of how that all worked out. But we're going to work through a plan that would show return in some capacity if we went down a roll. So that will be presented as we move through the presentation.
Let me ask another question. Do we have all of our money in West Milton or Susquehanna Bank? I mean, there's some of the local banks are offering some pretty nice interest on these and money markets.
Yep. So we have a lot of our liquid money in Susquehanna Community Bank. We also have money with Fulton Bank. About every 6 weeks or so, I'm checking the money market rates, and in fact, opened up a Fulton money market because they were offering better rates. Used that leverage with Susquehanna Community Bank to have them increase their rates. So I was able to take the existing money market and checking account that was earning like 1.7 up over to 4.5, based on getting them to go against each other. The bulk of our money is with Pliget and I forget the acronym, I apologize, but Pliget is a state investment that works with school districts. Pliget is where we have our capital funds. So everything that we borrowed for the renovation projects, capital accounts are over there. Their return on investment right now is about 5.5, and is higher than anything we get locally. And then our state funds come through and it goes to PSLAF, another state investment group that works with a lot of districts. And that is also getting 5.5% right now. So what I do about every 2 days, I go in and check, and I only move over those funds that are going to be short-term liquid numbers to the local banks. Everything else I keep with PSLAF and Pliget because we're getting a better rate of return. So I do try to stay up on it and look at it. Other local bank, I did speak with Milton Savings. Their rates were nowhere near unfortunately. I wanted to put money with them, but they weren't even close.
The Commonwealth is doing some good things with markets. Commonwealth.
Commonwealth? Okay. I can look at their. The one thing I think we'd have to look at though is the board approves the depositories that we work with. So for me to go outside of that, we would have to have, I think, the board approve new depositories for me to work with. But I can always look. I mean, it doesn't hurt to look. It's always a good conversation. But that's what I try to do. I try to keep an eye on it, and at the very minimum, work between the ones we have. And trust me, they are quick to act when I mention like, hey, it's not really where I want it. Like maybe we'll move our millions elsewhere, and then it's usually pretty big jump.
It is unfortunate with Milton Bank because they do support the district a lot.
They do, and that's why I had the conversation with them.
And I just shopped myself, and they're not even in the ball.
No, that's the reason I had the conversation with them. I was like, I'd love to do something with them, but I mean, I'm talking like half of what we are getting elsewhere. I will say Susquehanna Community Bank, their customer service has been incredible. Like we have had great customer service from them. I get a hold of their VP and their treasury department instantly if I need something. They will jump on it quickly. So when we have had issues or things come up, I can't say any bad things about them. It's been really good to work with them. Now Fulton Bank, if we weren't getting a good rate and using their lockbox services, I would never use them again. But it's just one of those pains that sometimes you got to go with what's giving you the best rate.
2 months ago, they were 6%.
Who's that, Fulton? Yeah, they're something.
Time to shop it.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm gonna share one more thing I think that is crucial as you were thinking about this. As we move forward and you look at this budget, that 2.7 number, I do not want to underestimate. We recognize that deficit number, but I think as Derek has taught me, we can work through that from a capital campaign or from a capital project standpoint, a revenue standpoint. I have to reiterate, he is hearing it from the business manager side. I'm hearing it from the superintendent side when it comes to where the basic education funding commission is coming out, and that the future is very bright for a district like ours. I mean, they have basically said it is unlawful, unconstitutional, right? That what they are doing and that like changes are coming. So I do not want to by any means say that we aren't going to be critical of that deficit that is there. What I am going to say to you, I think is so important that we are going to continue to look at, and is going to be something is not, and Derek, correct me if I'm wrong, not listed here, but that we are going to discuss with you when we look at the idea of a tax increase. Okay, I am absolutely willing as the superintendent of this district to work very creatively with our team to reallocate professionally based off of this, and not adding professional staff. But I think one of the number one things we're going to talk to you about coming back is our paraprofessionals and the idea of positions.
Can I jump in real quick?
And benefits.
Yes, I've heard to talk about it. I have the sheet in front of you guys on the capital project sheet. On the bottom half of that, it's projected benefits for aides. So this would be for all of our 10-month employees. They would be getting benefits, full benefits, health coverage to them. That's what the projected cost would look like. It's going to vary because the cost, if it's a single person health insurance compared to a family with kids and a spouse, you're talking about a difference of $9,000 per year up to $27,000 per year. So it can fluctuate greatly. So what I did was take an average of all our classified employees and see what are we paying on average? On average, it's about $20,000 or $22,000 for those benefits per staff member. So that's out there for you guys. Important to know that if this is something we consider and we do move forward and we do decide to give benefits to all employees, that it's not a one-time thing. Obviously, it's annual. That cost is always going to be there. And health insurance rates typically go up anywhere from 5 to 8%, up to some years 12%, based on the market. So it is something that we have to consider, that it's not just $600,000 now. It could be 600,000 times 7% times 9%. It goes on from there. Personally, if we can do it, I think it's fantastic. It will help with employee retention. And I think that our benefits are really what drives team members to the district. That's why people work here for a lot of people. And it's what keeps people. It's tough to leave when you're getting benefits as great as what the school district can offer. So just want to share that with everybody. So that's something to consider too.
Anything else? Nope. So it looks like the next meeting for budget is going to be February 6th. Time on that, 6?
Yep.
Here?
Yep.
All right. Motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Adjournment till 6 o'clock. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Milton Area School District Board of Directors for January 16th. Actually, a week later. We have roll call, please.
Mr. Fry?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Here.
Mr. Hunt?
Here.
Mr. Moser? Mrs. Rance?
Here.
Dr. Strasser?
Here.
Mrs. Waldron?
Here.
Dr. Weaver?
Here.
Mr. Hosterman?
Here.
Thank you.
This evening, we have Kinsley Hupp, who's a 4th grade student at James Bucker Elementary School, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Her parents are Remington and Autumn Hupp, and her teacher is Miss Buck. Would you please join us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Give Kinsey one before. Moving on to presentations this evening, just so parents are aware, there will be a break after the Panther Pride Award in the agenda for you to move out if you would like to. But our first presentation this evening is School Board Appreciation Month.
So January is all about school board appreciation. I think very excited as you walked in this evening. There's a plethora of things, I think, from all levels, including some cookies. I think they're pretty good. They are. Oh, good. But we just want to thank you. I think, for the crowd that is here, this is I'm going to say it, a thankless job at times. It is while it is an elected position by your community, it is an unpaid and a lot of time. As I've moved into this role over the past year and a half, I've seen the hours and time spent by the members of this board, and our gratitude as a leadership team, our gratitude as a community for the effort and time you put into this. So I think all our gifts are given out, correct? In leadership. So thank you. As simple as that. Thank you for what you do, and we are so grateful for it.
Thank you on behalf of the board for the recognition. Some of us do this to give back to the community, and some of us love education. So we appreciate serving and having the opportunity to lead the district. Any other board members have anything to say? All right. Thank you all so much. Moving on to high school student recognition for January. Rotary Student of the Month.
Good evening, board. First up, I'd like to invite Wyatt Fix up here. Wyatt is our Rotary Student of the Month for January. He's a 3rd-year member in our construction trades program. Wyatt is here. I think you've got a little army here supporting you tonight. I saw everybody rolling in. His dad is Jonathan Fiddler. Mom is Jeannie Fix. Mike Hauk is his stepdad, and Lindsay Mensch is his stepmom. He resides right here in Milton, Pennsylvania. Like I said, Wyatt is the 3rd-year member of our construction trades program. Very involved in his school community. He was a Boy Scout. Has helped and assisted with construction on the side in his free time. He loves to hunt. He loves to fish. He's a volunteer for the White Deer Fire Department. He's also learned how to play guitar, and he likes to butcher some deer in his free time. Awards and recognitions, and Mr. Walter talks about this a little bit, and I'll read it in a second, but he's been very involved with T. Ross Brothers this past year and this past summer, and is really working his way into a career in the construction field. He was part of our Skills USA program and part of some of those competitions, and is also a member of our National Technical Honor Society. We ask students when they fill out this form what their future plans are, and I love Wyatt's response here. I plan on going right into a career in construction. I feel like my skill set and my problem-solving skills will best be found in this field. More than likely, I'm going to a co-op program, so I'm going to make some money and save it up. Mr. Walter had this to say about Wyatt. Wyatt is a third-year construction trade student. He has had the highest GPA in construction trades since he started in the program. He is an awesome team leader, and he is my go-to guy for projects in the shop and the school community. And this is pretty cool. He participated in T. Ross Brothers Construction Academy Junior Internship Program this past summer, and he's also currently out on co-op working for T. Ross Brothers. Upon completing the training program, he will be NCCER Carpentry certified. He will have completed their core program, general carpentry, advanced carpentry, and form carpentry programs, all certifications that are recognized in the construction industry nationwide. So all of those things that he has already done, and he hasn't even graduated yet. I mean, the work ethic of Wyatt is second to none. When I asked Mr. Walter for his Rotary Student of the Month for his program, I mean, there was not even a second of hesitation that it was Wyatt Fix. And he plans on working his way all the way up to site superintendent someday. So this kid is the epitome of what we want to see coming out of our CT programs and construction trades. And it's just an honor to present him as Rotary Student of the Month for January. Next up, I'd like to invite Nathan Fink. He's our outstanding senior for the month of January. Nathan is the son of Douglas and Michelle Fink. He resides in New Columbia. As with all of our students of the month, many activities. He's a member of our enrichment program, a member of the National Honor Society, treasurer of our Spanish Honor Society, and he was also the team captain this past year of our Scholastic Scrimmage team. He was named Outstanding Student in Spanish 1 and Spanish 2, received the Math Award for the Heart of Mathematics. He has had the top honors in biology, Outstanding Achievement in English 10 honors, Math Award for mathematic ability, and Outstanding Achievement in Ancient Civilization and Mythology. He's looking to attend Penn College next year and is thinking about majoring in civil engineering with a minor in business administration. Teachers kind of jumped out of their seats to vote for Nathan for January. Great representative of our academic programs. And we have a special guest this evening to talk about it. I'm not going to read what Mr. Dick said. Mr. Dick is going to read it himself. So I'll invite Mr. Dick up. Very excited.
I'm honored to introduce the school board to our January Student of the Month, Nathan Fink. I had the pleasure of having Nathan this year in AP Calculus. And I just want to tell you how impressed I was with how he attacked the advanced coursework that we had in that class. Always with steadfastness and a smile. Okay, I'll do my work. One of the things that I loved, and I think this is becoming more and more rare these days with students, that he was always willing to share his response, even if he wasn't 100% sure he was right. He'd be like, okay, this is what I got. All right, work with me there. I'm really excited about Nathan as he moves on from Milton next year. We heard about his plans, and I think that's going to be spot on. I will drive on the bridges that he built. That'll be great. And I want to echo what Mr. Rance said as far as when I nominated him, there were a flurry of teachers that responded like, oh, yes, this is the guy, whether or not how involved he was in their subject or with scouts, to how amazing he had been working with some underperforming students in the class. One teacher said that. A third teacher stated she agreed with the nomination wholeheartedly. And another teacher said, yeah, Nathan's phenomenal. So here we go. January Student of the Month, phenomenal Nathan Fink.
Thank you very much. Congratulations to those two students. Moving on to our district recognition from all four buildings. White Deer Elementary first. Mr. Step.
Good evening, board. As always, it is my pleasure to bring to you our student of the month from White Deer. This month it is Skylar Tillman in fourth grade with Mrs. Phillips. Mrs. Phillips wrote that Skylar is a kind, hardworking student. He's eagerly excited to learn each day, and he always strives to do his very best. Recently, he's even set a goal of wanting to become a better reader so he can become more confident in all that he does. He makes everyone that he meets feel welcome, and he genuinely gets excited when he crosses paths with friends at school. Thanks to Skylar, our entire fourth grade class met a new White Deer student on the first day at White Deer and welcomed him into our classroom, even though he wasn't a student in our classroom. Skylar's positive attitude makes him a joy to have as a student. I want to echo Mrs. Phillips' words. Skylar is a student that I've seen tremendous growth in over the last 5 school years at White Deer. Skylar always gives his hardest, gives his best, even when things don't come easily. Skylar's a kid that perseveres, and I think that's really going to serve him well as he moves forward. Keep up the good work, buddy. Our White Deer Student of the Month for January, Skylar Tillman.
Good evening, board. I am here to present. Ms. Bauer, why don't you come up too? Come on, you can bring your phone camera. I'm going to present our student of the month, Ellie Reich. Ellie comes to school, and this is Miss Bauer. She wrote this, but I'm gonna read it. She comes to school each day ready to learn, ready to lead, and ready to help in any way that she can. She treats the classroom like home. She cleans up. She puts things away, things that aren't even her. She actively participates in discussions and activities and makes incredible connections between subjects. She sets a wonderful example for others, exceeds any and all academic expectations, and brings such a positive energy into each day. Her work ethic and heart of gold are so inspiring. Being her teacher, this is from Miss Bauer, is an absolute joy. And I got to tell you, I know they say teachers are sometimes born and not made. And I would say Ellie Reich at first grade is probably a pretty good example of that, because she is a little leader, and we are so excited for who she is right now, who she's becoming. And so I am very pleased to present our James F. Bacher Student of the Month, Ellie Reich.
Good evening, board. Middle school Baking Bread Student of the Month for January is Miss Kylie Schrock. She's here tonight, and she is the daughter of Tony and Melanie Schrock of Milton. She's a 7th grade student on our Black Pod in the middle school, and she was nominated for Student of the Month by her teachers. Teachers had the following to say about this young lady. Mr. Bauer, Kylie is an awesome kid. She comes in every day with a smile that brightens the room. See it. Okay. She leads by example and is a true blessing on our team. Keep up the good work. Ms. Miller, her math teacher, Kylie is an extremely hardworking student who shows how dedicated she is to her academics every day in class. She loves to volunteer and help her classmates out when needed. And Mr. Ritchie, Kylie is a very kind student, always enters the room with positive attitude, a great example for her peers. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to present the January Student of the Month for middle school, Ms. Kylie Schrock.
Good evening, board. I always enjoy following up our younger kids, because you see what they are as youngsters and what they mature into as high school students. We get to see the end of their journey with our kids, and it's a great experience for us. Seeing the change from little ones but also seeing that change from as they enter our building as freshmen and to high school to see how they mature and become leaders. One thing that you've heard me say a lot, you hear the administrative team talk about is developing leaders within our student population. It's something we believe is extremely important for students to take ownership of this building and their learning experience. And the young lady beside me, Miss Maria Painter, is a great example of that. I'm not going to say much more because a teacher that worked very closely and still works very closely with Maria, Miss Smith, has some incredible things to say about her. So I'm just going to read that, okay? In every educational institution, there's always one student who not only excels academically, but also embodies the qualities of leadership, resilience, and passion for learning. Today, we have the privilege of acknowledging such a student who has consistently demonstrated excellence in every aspect of their academic journey, Miss Maria Painter. Maria has not only maintained an impressive GPA, but has also actively participated in various extracurricular activities, showcasing her commitment to her holistic development. Whether it's through leadership roles in the student organizations, participation in community service initiatives, or contributing to sports, this young lady has proven to be a well-rounded individual. What truly sets her out as an outstanding student, apart from all the others, is not just her academic prowess or involvement in extracurricular, but her ability to inspire and uplift those around her. She serves as a role model for her peers, demonstrating the importance of hard work and dedication in the career of technical education. She is a member of the Skills USA Community Service Trio that placed first at the state level and went to Atlanta, Georgia to represent PA at the national level this past summer. She balances employment at Summit Early Learning in Lewisburg as an assistant teacher as part of her diversified occupation program, as well as a PC Now courses at the high school. Talk about an incredible example of what we would like our students to be at Milton. Maria lives that and breathes that every day and truly is an inspiration and an example for her peers to show what opportunities we have at Milton and the individual that we aspire to send out our doors when they're done here at Milton High School. Our January Citizen of the Month, Maria Painter.
One more presentation to get through this evening. Mr. Toll being recognized for the assistant business administrator. Go ahead,
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to have to acknowledge the fact that Mr. Tull is okay. Talk a little bit about what he does and why he's a great recipient for this award. So when Darren was hired as the assistant business administrator, it was a brand new hybrid position. And with that came a level of uncertainty and pressure. He was tasked with taking on the roles and responsibilities that were previously handled by 2 full-time employees. To say that Darren met expectations is an understatement. Since he has started, he has found efficiencies in all that he does. He has been able to not only manage the tasks of 2 roles, but he's found ways to improve upon them. He has taken total ownership of the assistant business manager position and built it into a vital part of the district's organizational infrastructure. Most impressively is that he has done all of this while always looking for ways to say yes and putting people first. When I talk about people, I mean staff members, students, contractors, family members, taxpayers. He really touches base with such a broad range of people that interact with this district. He may talk to more of our community members than just about anybody else in the district when it comes to transportation and taxpayers. He is affable, he's humble, he's highly talented, and I am proud to have him on our team, and I'm looking forward to all of the ways he will better this district as he hones his skills. I wish he was here to hear that, so he would never let me forget the words that I said. I may share it with him, I don't know. But he's home tonight with his daughter, taking care of her. So he has much more important things that he's taking care of tonight. But I thank everybody for allowing us to acknowledge the work that he's done and really appreciate the position that he's in. So thank you to everyone for acknowledging that.
thank you so much, those who came out this evening, especially after having to reschedule last week's meeting. Part of serving on this board is being able to share in the celebrations of our students and our staff successes. So thanks for all you do. Thanks for being great Black Panthers, from our assistant business administrator all the way down to our youngest sitting right in the front. Thanks for being here this evening. We'll move on. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to go into executive session, matters of personnel and student matters.
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second. All in favor? We'll return to address the remainder of the agenda. To leave executive session, please. So moved. For a second? Second. First and second, is all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Right, continuing on our agenda for this evening, item 4E.
So we are going to begin. I think we have a couple student points to make, and then we're going to dive into our data presentation. Correct, ladies?
Okay, so for academics this month, we had Keystone testing that was completed. On January 4th and 5th, we had the lit exam. January 8th and 9th, we had the bio exam. And then the 10th and 11th, we had the algebra exam. We also had the end of marking period 2 and semester 1 on Wednesday, January 17th. And the first day of semester 2 began on Thursday, January 18th. Learning Lab is also currently running Monday through Thursday after school for extra help in math, English, and science.
So the National Arts Society helped at Bacher with their paint night on Tuesday, December 19th. There's some pictures of students painting.
For sports, winter sports season has officially started. Currently, boys basketball is 2 and 7, girls basketball is 4 and 6. Co-ed varsity bowling started. Boys varsity swimming is 1 and 3. Girls varsity swimming is 0 and 4. Boys varsity wrestling is 8 and 3, and girls varsity wrestling is just getting started.
And then also for sports, I believe we have for the cheerleaders, they had district championships on Saturday, January 13th, and they gained their 11th PIAA district title and gained the top overall score of the day between 12 different teams. And they are now states bound. I believe they also were just in Texas and just came back as well.
We had our snow dance at the Walton Inn 2 Sundays ago. The snow dance was sponsored by the National Honor Society, and this year's Snow King and Queen were Evan Yoder and Aubrey Carl.
That's all.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, ladies. Sorry, you weren't on the agenda. We'll do better job getting the agenda for next month. Now, moving on to item 4E.
Okay, so we are going to continue our conversation from, I was going to say last week, but now it's 2 weeks ago, regarding schedule discussion and the master schedule and what we're looking at. There's been some questions posed by the board to our leadership team. The team is going to take the lead here and share a lot of the answers and continue the conversation on a secondary schedule change. Leading off, Mr. Ants.
All right, good evening, board. So as Dr. Bickard said, I know that we left the committee meeting 2 weeks ago, with some questions, with some concerns, with a desire for some deeper understanding, and we understand that, respect that, and appreciate it. So we're hoping that tonight we can answer some of those questions, and kind of give you a better perspective and an idea of where we're coming from on this proposed change of a master schedule. So the first slide that we're looking at, go ahead and go to the next one. The first slide that we're looking at, we just wanted to kind of take a step back, and go back to why we initially talked about proposing a change to the master schedule. Last May, our committee meeting on May 2023, we did present to the board a lot of our initial thoughts on why we wanted to make this change. And some of those big ones we wanted to go back to before we dive into some of the more questions and the more deeper nuances of the schedule is really at the fundamental kind of crux of this change. It's a desire to increase the amount of time that our teachers are teaching students. That really summarizes kind of the entire approach to this change. And there's a lot that goes into that, but that is ultimately our goal, is to increase the amount of time that our teachers, our most valuable resource, and how we're utilizing. The other couple things that we brought up, something that's definitely in consideration when you're talking about moving to a period schedule as opposed to a 2-semester block schedule, is that continuity of skills and content. Right now in our current 2-semester block schedule, just for example, a student can take a math course during the fall semester, and that will start in approximately mid-August and end in approximately mid-January. There's a very good chance that student will not step foot into a math classroom for another calendar year when you're looking at a 2-semester block schedule, and that's definitely a concern. While the instructional time in essence remains the same, that gap is still there. That definitely has some implications on Keystone exam retakes as well when you're talking about that long gap in instruction before you're sitting back down to take that Keystone exam. When you talk about moving to a period schedule, and again, we'll get more into it, but eliminating this PLC model and, increasing the amount of sections that are offered, not only does that provide more opportunities for students, but it also will decrease class size. And I know that there were some questions from the board in regards to, research and data and statistics that are out there that would support this change. And again, we go back to the crux of why we're looking at this change, which is to increase the amount of time that teachers are teaching students. That ultimately can result in smaller class sizes, and research is there that shows that smaller class sizes leads to more effective student learning. There's definitely the ability to increase students being able to take elective courses. Again, when we're talking about going to 24-25 school year, it's not necessarily increasing the amount of electives or introducing new electives, but being able to ensure that students have more opportunities to take the existing electives that are already in our course catalog. There's more flexibility of scheduling for students and more flexibility to run some of our AP and dual enrollment courses that at times we cannot run due to smaller enrollment and a need to keep those other sections intact. So that's just kind of a wide 10,000-foot view as to why we're looking at this change. But as we move forward here, we're going to dive into some more specifics of your questions.
So on the next page there, if you take a look at a sample schedule that we have put in place, when we were looking at creating a schedule, we wanted to do our best to a couple of things: minimize the loss of instructional time through transitions, because I know that is something that we had some questions and concerns about, increasing the number of transition times that we have. So we wanted to minimize that time, but also then increase the length of the period. We have had some period schedules in the past where the duration of the class period was under 40 minutes. So we wanted to do everything that we could to try to increase the length of that course, the individual classes, but yet still maintain a schedule that would be able to allow kids to take all the course offerings that they currently take. And the way we currently operate right now is we have 4 courses in the fall, we have 4 courses in the spring, and basically all we will be doing is just taking those 2 separate sections of classes and just creating one schedule out of that. But we wanted to maximize that length. So one of the things that we did there was to minimize some of the time that's in the hall, the transition time. We currently operate with 4-minute transition times to get from one block to the next. We reduced that number to 3 minutes transition time, and the difference in total amount of transition time, we have 24 minutes of transition time in our schedule. And in a normal regular schedule, we have 27 minutes of transition time with the way we currently have it right now. If you flip to the next page, we have a sample activity schedule. because one of the things that we looked at removing from, we currently have what is called a pride time. It's an opportunity for enrichment, for remediation, but it's also an opportunity for our clubs to meet, for our extracurricular type stuff to meet. So clubs, and so we built in a sample schedule for that. We're looking at probably once a week to run this schedule. So that's a sample schedule of what we looked at to run a weekly activity period. Now, you may have noticed on both the regular schedule and the activity schedule that blocks 1 and 4, their time frame is a little bit different. The beginning of the day, we added a few minutes, I believe, on the regular schedule, it's 4 minutes. We added to allow for morning announcements. And then we added a few at the end of the day as well. In that last block of time, we added a few minutes as well to for any announcements that may need to be made at the end of the day.
So on the next slide, if we can go there, Mr. Berge already alluded to the fact that finessing some of the transitional times to get it to really just a net loss of 3 transitional minutes, 27 minutes per day in the hallways. One of the things that I found interesting is like the actual teacher impact with students. You're gaining 24 minutes a day of teacher FaceTime with kids that direct, like during a typical day. And that's really important to us. It was important to me in the time that I spent as a high school teacher, that day in and day out FaceTime with groups of kids throughout an entire year leads to deeper relationships and deeper ability to learn throughout the entire scope of the year. So that's a benefit, I think, as well.
So impact on staffing. So when you look at this, I think one of the questions that was asked, or that I think previously, and those of you that have been here for the duration of this, one of the reasons to go to block was reduction of staff. We are not through this model saying, and I said this during the finance committee, we're looking at reallocating, not changing our staffing and needing to add a ton of staff by going back to this. Doesn't change our substitute procedures or processes. I will also say, as Mr. Rance stated at the beginning, through these questions, we have really looked at some things. And one of the conversations we are having that I think is important for the board to hear is we're looking at how to share staff. And that was something that was not a real conversation until recently. And here's why. Currently, we use staff that are shared between Bodker and White. We use staff that are shared between the middle and high school. What we have learned is, the middle school's got to run very similar to the high school because of the handful of teachers that are there. And we pose the question, what if that doesn't? What if we can, yes, we're giving you a sample middle school, high school. We're really, through this process, we looked and said, okay, 4th and 5th grade are now going to be in a location. Move to this type of schedule. We might be able to pair some staffing, reallocate some staffing, do some things differently between White Deer and the middle school, share staff there. And again, that conversation wasn't even in our minds until recently because, 4th and 5th grade weren't happening until mid-November. So that's been enlightening kind of for us even over the past 2 weeks of, wow, we couldn't even think of this because it wasn't real. So that might be something that is really, Mr. Settler's been part of that. Okay, what can we do differently? What if elementary didn't rely on each other? So I think from a staffing standpoint, again, we anticipate reallocating, looking for opportunities. If we reduce in one area in a role, can we add somewhere else to increase our opportunities at both White Deer and the middle school? So what's key in that? We have to understand exactly what the middle school has to have certification-wise versus what they do have. So we're working. So again, staffing implications, yes, but ultimately, do we assume it's going to be a need to just add people because we would move outside of a block? No.
So the next slide talks about special education implications, excuse me. And when the questions came from the board, there were 2 main questions on special education. One was, will IEP revisions be necessary? The short answer to that is our teachers, our staff at the beginning of each year have to revise all IEPs anyway because of location changes, because of schedule changes, things like that. So it would not be in addition to what they're already doing. It would just be a part of what's already happening anyway. As far as like social work, speech, PTOT, those kinds of things, the question was, how would they be affected? There won't be any effect on those. Those are mandated times that are in the IEP that we will meet. You know, we talked about like one of the things, for example, to show you is like our speech therapists, they will write into an IEP instead of saying 20 minutes a week, they might say 120 minutes per 4-week month. So that if we need to adjust things, we can. So it gives a little more flexibility. Still get the same amount of time that month, FaceTime with those people, just what will that look like and how will that work? One of the other things that we talked about as a group, and I've worked very hard with our principals on, is like, what does this look like for our special ed teachers? What does this look like for our students? Catherine and I kind of reminisced because we both taught here together during a period schedule. So like, I see that it works. I've done it. There's obviously going to be a lot of training and a lot of just communication things that we need to work through, but it does work. We also, what I would want to let my staff know is the first year of anything is hard. We will listen and we will make changes as we need to and adjust. So there will be times that they will be able to see kids. Each kid, we called it maintenance. I don't know what we'll call it this year, but basically it's an intervention time, a time to get some assistance on things that they need help with, a time to retake tests, a time like that will be built into every special education student schedule as well.
So fielding the question about MTSS in an 8-period schedule specific to middle school and high school, there was concerns about MTSS being negatively affected, and the opposite is true in terms of moving to an 8-period schedule, both at the high school and the middle school, to be reinforced and bolstered in many ways. Specific to the high school, we've talked about, and you've heard earlier this evening about continuity content, making sure that kids get access to core content areas throughout the school year and not having that gap in learning. So that continuity of content skills equates to a continuity of interventions as well. So the more time a kid is in front of the teacher, more opportunity they're going to have for those interventions at the high school level. At the middle school level specifically, we'll have greater opportunity to target schedule students that need interventions. And the thing that I'm most excited about the opportunity is we won't be pulling them from something that they love to do in order to give them interventions. And unfortunately, that's the world that we live in sometimes now in the middle school. So moving to an 8-period schedule would give us that opportunity, target schedule a student for interventions and them not miss something else.
The next topic is assessment data. And one of the questions from the board, which is a great one, is what does our assessment data look like pre the move to block scheduling versus the move to block scheduling, which occurred in 2013. The problem with that is the assessments aren't the same. And Mrs. Ettinger should have included in your board packet a short PowerPoint entitled Historical Data 2002, I think, to 2014. One of the slides on the front would be 11th grade PSSAs. For those of you that were in school at the time, or for those of you that were employed here at the time, our high stakes testing from 2002 to 2012 on that first slide called 11th grade PSSA was the PSSA test. It was not the Keystone test. So when we were in period schedule, our high stake testing was all done in 11th grade, and it was called the PSSA, similar to the tests that our elementary kids and our middle school kids take. We did include this data for you to see. proud of that data. We had a positive trend line on our PSSA scores in 11th grade. The problem is the same year that we changed to block scheduling, the state also changed to Keystone exams. So the next slide in that short PowerPoint is 11th grade Keystone. So we do have the 2013, 14, 15. So our first 3 years in our literature and algebra Keystone entering into block. So unfortunately for the high school testing scores, we really don't have any apples to apples to compare because the test is completely different. If you continue in that PowerPoint to middle school, again, if you were a student in middle school at that time, or if you were a teacher at that time, and you look at the 2014, 15, 16 time period, on the graph, you will see a huge dip in our scores. Again, is that the schedule change, or is that because at that time, the state did a significant change to the PSSA testing at the same time? And certainly Mr. Scoggins, Mrs. Waldron would have lived that day to day. All of a sudden with very limited time preparation, they were now prepping for a test that was significantly different than the test that they were prepping for the year before. So we do have historical data. It does show a change in that 2013, 14, 15 time period, but there are extraneous variables that would not allow anyone to conclude that it was the schedule change that resulted in that data change. But the historical data is there for anyone to look at in your board packet. Any questions on that? The next slide is specific to our surveys. We made the decision to survey our teachers on, I believe it was 2 Fridays ago. We got the survey out. We had some weather issues, so then we did a second, hey, a reminder that this survey was there, and we did get a boost a bit in our responses. I'll speak first about the high school teacher responses. We got 43 responses, so that's about a 50% response rate. So for those of you who know surveys, that's not bad. And the question was simply the choice of an 8-period, 45-minute schedule versus a 4-block, 82-minute class, which is what they currently run. 15 people chose the change to an 8-period, 45-minute class schedule, and 28 chose the staying with the 4-block, 82-minute class schedule. You have in your packet the raw data. When creating this survey, I did an open text box. It was an anonymous survey, again, to eliminate any feeling of concern about a response connected to a name. And I just simply asked what factors contributed to your decision. So you can see every staff member's entire response. Some people did 1 sentence, and some people gave an extensive paragraph as to the information that they contributed. It should be, I see some of you looking for it. It should be an Excel spreadsheet, Mrs. Ettinger included. Got it? Okay.
Blue and white. Blue and white.
Okay, second, we'll go to the middle school. Middle school had 21 responses, and that is shy of a 50% response. And they, their survey was framed a little bit differently because there were multiple conversations in multiple different settings by multiple different people presenting a certain schedule to them for consideration. So that survey was more of, are you in favor of the proposed schedule? And that was a yes. a yes, but not next year, or a no. So of the 21 responses, 9 were a clear yes, 4 were yes, but not next school year, and 8 were no. Similar to the high school survey, it was an anonymous survey and an open, unlimited text box to address what factors contributed to their response. And you have the raw data to take a look at their reasoning to support or not support any change. Any questions there for us?
I have one. Was that just out of curiosity? It's actually noted in here in one of the responses. Was any survey ever taken to the students to see their interpretation and the impact that they might?
Yes, so we have a survey drafted for students. It's ready to go. I think the 2.5 days of not being in school interfered with that. So again, this is kind of a work in progress. You know, we certainly can come back with additional information. I don't think we felt pressure to have everything for you today, but absolutely that is drafted. I will say, as part of our comprehensive plan, John and many of the administrators met with students at every grade level. I was present for the high school meetings, and the schedule changes came up at that time. So we do have some documentation from our comprehensive process on that. Obviously, that was a select group of students that came, and we certainly heard at that time things on both sides. I want to stay in block. It's 84 minutes. You know, it gives me time so I don't have much homework at night because I can do the stuff there. You know, or boy, I would like to have, you know, some more opportunities to take different classes if that is a possibility under a period schedule. So we certainly heard arguments on both sides, but yes, that is the next step.
So let's pause there because that's important. So that staff survey will be existing, but we have 2 students sitting right here, and I know there's been a little bit of discussion. I think if the board's okay, I'd love to hear honest feedback on what they see at this time.
Okay, so for the last 4 years in high school, have experienced block scheduling to a full extent, and I can confidently say from my experience that I do not believe that block scheduling is the optimal schedule plan for students. I don't think it opens up enough opportunities for people who want to go to school for things other than like academic subjects. I think it severely limits people who are more interested in the arts or people who are interested in like fine arts education. At the beginning of this PowerPoint, it did touch on a lot of the subjects that I have thought about a lot, but I want to specifically focus on the flexibility to run AP classes as well as the flexibility to have more electives. In the last 2 years, I have selected to take 5 AP classes, and I have been able to take 1 of them. And honestly, as a student, that is pretty disappointing when it's a subject that you're passionate about, that you think you want to go into, and you're not able to take a course like that would be a universal credit if you were to perform well, which unfortunately, up until yesterday, none of the colleges that I applied to and have been accepted to accepted Penn College Now credits. None of them. So the lack of ability to take an AP class as a student can be very frustrating when it's a subject that you care about a lot. But also, I am personally a huge advocate for the arts and specifically music. And I know that having elective courses for 1/2 of the year, even though it's an elective, it could be something that someone is extremely passionate about, that they want to pursue in the future, and that they've known forever that they want to pursue, and they can only take it for 1/2 the year. Our music department does very well with what we're given and what we have, and it has gotten better over the last couple years. But there are students who aren't able to take a band class and still use their pride time to come down and learn the music and perform in the concerts for the school. And that shouldn't be something that a student who is passionate about the arts should have to do. It should be an option that they have for the entire year. and opening up electives for the entire year has been explained to me as an opportunity for even more elective slots, more elective classes to choose from, and more time to focus on specific lessons, specific niches such as piano or a stringed instrument as well. And I think it's just very important that a student should have those options, those opportunities to get into schools that aren't just like your traditional academic university or just becoming something that is very common, which there's of course nothing wrong with that. And also, as I see here, there is actually more time for CTE programs, which I think is equally as important, that those CTE programs should be given more time to learn these very valuable trades that are applied in everyday life that will never run out. And I think that period scheduling is ultimately the optimal way to give everyone an opportunity to do what they want.
I like block scheduling for myself. However, I do see many of the benefits that do come from period scheduling. I think that for myself, I like it because I'm a student that is a part-time student. So I come in late and do the classes that I need currently. But when I was here all day long doing period scheduling, I can sit through an 82-minute class. However, many students cannot sit through an 82-minute class and use all of the time that is there wisely. So many students do need a shorter amount of time so that they are productive throughout the entire day and not wasting time and making sure that everything is fully productive. So I do see for majority of students how a period schedule would be more effective because many cannot sit through an 82-minute class productively doing things the entire time. I do think that it is important to have the activity schedule because clubs are already I'm in multiple clubs. We already have minimal participation in clubs, so it is important to be continuously promoting different club activities. Clubs do a lot of things for the school, and it is a small group of students. So I think that with an activity schedule once a week, it could promote more involvement because it would be just once a week, but we need to make sure that students are actively participating in that activity schedule as well.
And to touch on what Zoe said a little bit more, because we only have the 40 minutes at the end of the day for clubs and activities, but there are much more clubs and activities at our school than just 5 for a 5-day week. It would be super important to have an activity schedule if you're a student who likes to be involved. I know I'm involved in multiple clubs, and oftentimes I do not get to go to all of the meetings I want to go to because they overlap or because that's my only 40 minutes and I have to make up a test or I have some lesson going on or something like that. An activity schedule that would come out of a period schedule would allow myself and other students to be involved fully with all those clubs instead of meeting once every other week because it doesn't want to line up with overlap with a different club, or you're not able to go to the one meeting you might have that whole month because of how the schedule works out, just because of everything being so compact all at once.
The only question that I do have is what would making up work look like in a period schedule? Like how, like, because of the activities, like if you don't have the pride time, when would students be making up that work?
One question that came up, I don't think we heard answer to, was study halls. Study halls are proposed to come back. So is that a logical answer to that?
Yeah, that is correct. Yep. Yep.
Ellen, I'm glad you brought up the music department. Just for the board's reference, I did get an email from Mr. Hewitt this morning voicing some concerns from the music department. Asked if I thought he should come tonight to address the board. Didn't feel it was necessary, but I'm happy to share his email with the full board as well.
Okay, we'll continue. Next. The next slide is supervision model. The current supervision model that we're utilizing for teachers is the differentiated supervision plan. That's part of your board packet.
This is the same plan that we've used for the last 9 years. And then the principal supervision model is part of the Act 93 agreement, and we have been using that for a while now.
Next one, Dwayne. So a question that came up at the committee meeting was the impact on career and technical education programs if we move to an 8-period schedule. So I just tried to summarize it with those two graphs you're looking at there. On the left, you're looking at the total instructional hours that our CTE programs currently receive in a block schedule. That's 369 hours over the course of the year. In a period schedule, the proposed period schedule, that would actually increase to 405 hours. So there would be an increase there. And when we talk about what would it look like, if you look on the right-hand side, I used automotive technology as the example. But when you look at an 8-period schedule, it really is not any different than the way we're currently scheduling our career and tech ed programs right now. Really the biggest difference, and in my opinion, it's more of a benefit. Right now with the 2-semester block schedule, without drawing up a diagram, one half of the year is there's more class time in the CTE program for level 1 students, and the other half of the year it's shorter. That's the easiest way to put it, just the way that the block schedule works. If we would move to a period schedule, that amount of time in that level program would be consistent throughout the entire course of the year. And we would still put all of those courses back to back to back to ensure that there is that continuity, because it doesn't make any sense for an automotive program or construction program or somebody like that, to go period 1, start working on a project, leave and go to English class and come back. They would still be able to be grouped together in that block of time in a period schedule. And all of our programs, in essence, would be able to work like that. Entrepreneurship is still going to operate on a scope and sequence that is comprised of a number of electives. So theirs would not be grouped together necessarily like that. It would just be up to the students and the guidance counselor and the teacher to ensure that they're taking a certain number of electives during their junior and their senior year. And then, of course, diversified occupations, 95% of that program is done outside of the building on a co-op, work study program. But the other 5 programs would operate in a model very similar, if not identical to the one that you're looking at right there. Any questions on that one? All right, next slide there, Dwayne. There was a question in regards to what are some of our neighboring districts, IU districts, and or high performing districts doing. So I just thought that just to give a better overview, I did a survey as well as a dive into some websites of our regional high schools just to see what is everybody else doing. So to just be very simple about it, on your left-hand side, that's every district in this area that's doing a period schedule. And on the right, that's every school that is doing a block schedule. 2 notes that came out of the survey: Lewisburg runs an AB block schedule. So as opposed to 2 semesters, they just run it every other day. They do talk about they have a decent number of students that are involved in concurrent enrollment, which means they're going on site to take classes at either Bloomsburg University or Susquehanna University. A lot of students like to take some courses on site and then some courses at their home district. And when you run a block schedule, the way they run it, it's very difficult to schedule that. That was just something they noted. And Loyal Sock also noted that they are thinking about moving to a period schedule for the 24-25 school year. Selinsgrove, Mifflinburg, and Central Mountain said that they were content with their block schedule, and then everyone on the left indicated that they plan on continuing on with their current schedule, their period schedule. That's just an idea of what our local regional districts are doing. Next slide. There was just a request, I think kind of went along with the supervision plan as to what our teacher ratings looked like for this past year. So the wheels of the Department of Education do not move at a very high speed. So in order to finalize supervision ratings for the previous year, you need to wait for school building scores, which need to come in, need to be implemented into your act or your 13-1 ratings. Those need to all be completed, signatures collected, finalized, and then sent out to teachers. So the long and short of it is the 23-24 ratings will be finished by the end of February. I think that's our deadline, isn't it, guys? About the end of February. So I'm sure
22-23 ratings.
Yes, I'm sorry, 22-23 will be finalized in February, so we can get those to you at that time once they're done. But we thought we would still bring up the 21-22 teacher ratings, and you can see that they're broken down by level. 58% were distinguished, 42% proficient, and there was no one in the needs improvement or the failing category. And then our last slide, and we'll talk about this, and then anybody else in the leadership team that wants to chime in. Looking ahead, 24-25, I know that, at the end of the day, I think we all collectively want to work together. We want to see students succeed. That's the bottom line. And when we talked about moving to a period schedule and investigating changing this schedule, I still go back to the crux of this was that we want to maximize the amount of time that our teachers are in front of students. I believe that it is a collective belief among this leadership team that the block schedule, and specifically at the high school and the PLC model, is not the most effective use of our teachers' time at this time. So when you look at those numbers on the screen up there, there was a question, and it was a great question. What's the percentage of teachers teaching 8 blocks versus 7 blocks versus 6 blocks? So right now in the high school schedule, there's 8 possible blocks that you could teach throughout the course of the entire year, both semesters. There's only 15% of teachers that are teaching all 8 of those blocks. Teachers teaching 7 blocks is 6%, and 79% of teachers are only teaching 6 blocks. I say only, it's not to say that they are wasting their time, but it's our belief that there is a better way to maximize the resource that is our teachers, and that's getting them in front of kids. So I think it's to say that in investigating an 8-period schedule, we believe that would be the most efficient use of those teacher resources. But I do believe there can be further discussion about the block schedule as well, if that would be the board's wish, and still look at getting teachers in front of students more. But at the end of the day, looking at 80% of your teaching staff only teaching 6 out of a possible 8 blocks, I do not believe is the best use of our resources. That's really what it comes down to. We need to maximize those resources, get teachers in front of students more throughout the course of the day, increase those sections, increase the ability to take electives, and reduce those class sizes. That's the crux of what we want to see happen.
So with that said, I don't think we necessarily answered every detail of the questions that were asked of us, but I feel one of the gains of having an extra week was I'm not sure we would have had all of that by last Tuesday. We were talking about this. So we wanted to give you what we had. I think what I'll do is turn it over to you. If there's questions, well, I guess I should say this. The other question that was asked was, where does the board fit into this decision-making process? And I think the answer to that is this. So in doing some research, and as we all know, Brenda is amazing. Brenda dove into, we looked at minutes of board meetings. And we tried to determine, was there somewhere beyond 2014 that there was a vote by the board? From what we can see in searching that there is nothing other than in grants and donations, because of the block grant, that states the board has to vote on this. However, being very clear, just like we did with realignment, we want to be open. We want to have these conversations. I take you back when we presented on May 8th, our timeline at that time began on April 11th, began in December of us discussing what does this look like. And we began looking at a recommendation last April, community presentations, talking to our staff, met at the committee meeting on the 9th, and we began continuous course analysis from June to September. We got additional input from teachers in August. We did initially in September, if you remember, talk about this. That was at the moment I kind of was like, whoa, trying to do both the realignment discussion and this was a lot. Because we really wanted to come back in November and make the decision. But we paused, and then I think You know, what happened 2 weeks ago was the conversation is reopened. While I understand it's not a board decision, what I would like to do over the next month by February 13th is to make sure we have answered everything and we have talked about it. And then on that date on the 13th is if we are in agreement and we want to move forward, our team will do that. We'll begin to work that. If we are not, and we feel there is still hesitancy for whatever reason, we can do that. I think a very important part of this is teacher survey results are telling. However, I think in context with that is that idea of what does a full day look like? What does planning look like in all of that? Andrew said it very well. It is not about our teachers not wisely using their planning time, not wisely using their ability to organize themselves. I will always say the greatest resource is our teachers. If it means next year we have to consider in a block schedule, the majority of teachers teaching 7 blocks rather than 8, we want to have that conversation. I'll argue that every day that it's better for kids, that smaller class size. That's an option we have. Again, not saying that what our teachers do or don't do is not phenomenal. They are an excellent, the best resource we have. We just want more of them with our kids. I'm also going to tell you that as the superintendent of this district, looking at equity amongst planning time, K-12, that's a piece I'm looking at. How do we ensure that what a kindergarten teacher is getting is similar to a high school teacher? So it's balancing all that. We're looking at the whole picture. So my question to you is, what else do you need? What other information can we provide you over the next month that we can, and even if that means you got to think about it, we're in our committee meeting on the 6th about budget. Towards the end, we can say, hey, these are a couple of the questions, or send those. We'll continue to work through this. But for the sake of our staff and our principals building a schedule, February 13th is going to be that date where we decide which way we're going. Okay, and how that's going to work, whether it's going to stay block or go period. Okay, so any questions we can answer today?
Will a period schedule affect the students who leave the district for college courses?
It would definitely be a little different, but no. If you want to go to, I'm sure you're referencing early college at Commonwealth and Bloomsburg University. They would still be able to schedule their courses accordingly. When you look and schedule through Bloomsburg, you're able to pick your courses, what's left at that point. But if you want to pick a course that's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday in the morning, knowing that there's a course at Melton in the afternoon you want to take, or vice versa, that's what you do. There's enough options in all of the different, course guides. If you need that English credit and you want to get it in Lit 101 at Bloomsburg, but you want to take PC Now Psychology at Melton, you can schedule accordingly so that you have time to get back. They also make sure that the majority of their course offerings at early college gets kids back to their home district in time to participate in extracurricular activities as well. So will it look a little different? Sure, but it's still absolutely be able to be done.
Any other questions this evening? Okay, I just want to thank the administration. I said in my email this would potentially cause more work. I'm sure it did, but thank you for all the great information this evening. All right, moving on. For F, comments from visitors related to agenda items this evening. At the end. Yep, second. All right, moving on to approval of minutes. I'd like to make a motion for approval of minutes listed under item 5.A and 5.B. So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Moving on to item 6, executive report. I'd like to make a motion for a block vote to approve items listed under 6.A through 6.C. Second. Motion and a second. Any discussion? Questions? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Fry? Yes. Ferris?
Yes.
Yes.
Mrs. Rance?
Yes.
Dr. Strasser?
Yes.
Mrs. Waldron?
Yes.
Dr. Weaver?
Yes.
Mr. Hoseman?
Yes. To make a motion for item 6.D, recommended approval or denial of Milton Area Education Association grievance number 23-24-2. Reminder, board members are asked to vote with an approval or denial signification. Roll call vote, I believe. Or do we need a second?
Anything else?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions or clarification? Further
Have
clarification?
the attorney clarify the difference between the two answers?
Absolutely. If you approve the grievance, that means you're upholding the grievance and it will go back to status quo as it is, teacher. If you deny the grievance, then the discipline imposed will continue.
Any other questions or clarification? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Harris? Deny. Mr. Hunt?
Deny.
Mrs. Rance?
Deny.
Dr. Strasser?
Deny.
Mrs. Waldron?
Deny.
Dr. Weaver?
Deny.
Mr. Fry?
Deny.
Mr. Hosterman?
Approved.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Finance Committee, Mr. Harris.
I'd like to make a motion for blocking on items 7A and 7B.
Second. Motion and a second. Any questions? Discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hunt?
Yes.
Excuse me, Mrs. Rance?
Yes.
Dr. Strasser?
Yes.
Mrs. Waldron?
Yes.
Dr. Weaver?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Harris? Yes. Mr. Hosterman?
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything additional this evening? Great, moving on. Facilities, Mrs. Rance.
We have a meeting Thursday. Get back together, so. He's busy. I believe you're all planning to come, so.
8 a.m.
Sorry.
Yeah, yes, the meeting is at 8 a.m. Bacher project meeting.
Otherwise, I don't have any questions unless anyone else does on facilities. Conferred. Anything from you, Mr. Huffman, that any want to add?
Going smoothly.
Good. These are good words. All right. Thank you. Nothing else.
Thank you. We got athletics and extracurricular. Mr. Moser, Mr. Fry.
Yes, I'll make a motion for a block vote from 9A to 9E.
Motion. A second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions, discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Rance?
Yes.
Dr. Strasser?
Yes.
Mrs. Waldron?
Yes.
Dr. Weaver?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Harris? Yes. Mr. Hunt?
Yes.
Mr. Hosterman? Thank you.
Anything additional this evening?
Okay. No, sir.
We got Educational Technology Committee, Mrs. Waldron.
Okay, we're going to do a block vote of 10A and 10B. Do I make a motion to?
Yeah.
Okay. 10A and 10B.
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments? This is just 10A and 10.
Yeah. 10C is separated.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Rance?
Yes.
Dr. Strasser?
Yes.
Mrs. Waldron?
Yes.
Dr. Weaver?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Harris? Yes. Mr. Hunt?
Yes.
Mr. Hosterman?
Yes.
Okay, I was asked to separate 10C, and I'm assuming that there's questions about recommending to approve the purchase of the curriculum program Leader in Me. Are there any questions or discussion?
So I think we need a motion and a second first, and then.
Sorry. I have a motion. What should the motion be? To discuss this?
To approve it and then.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I would like to make a motion to approve the purchase of Leader in Me curriculum.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Now, any further discussion?
Any further discussion?
I'd like to make a motion to table item 10C just so we can identify, just want to find some more information on it. So if we can just table it till maybe next month so we can see what you can gather. I know you mentioned that there were some other schools that were already partnering in it.
Not locally.
But, right, but I mean, within Pennsylvania.
There's a lot available online. I looked.
And now you've had a motion and a second, you have to vote.
Then.
You now have.
Sorry.
Okay, I think maybe I misinformed you. So I knew Mr. Harris was going to bring this up, so I instructed him to go that direction. So it sounds like to do it a table properly, we need to withdraw the first motion and second.
Or do the vote, and if
or we could continue with the vote, deny it,
or do the vote, and if it doesn't pass,
come back to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's move forward with the motion in a second as is to approve it.
Okay.
Questions? Do you have questions for the person that is bringing this to the?
Yeah, I just like to see some more information on it. Identify what they take, like what their interpretation is, and if it adds anything, like if it complicates the school schedule for the elementary, because I know it's essentially an additional class. So just to see how that impacted them when they made the transition and what they thought about it after the implementation. I think that's something that would be vital to our consideration, or at least mine.
Any other questions? So again, we're voting to approve it as is. Okay. Or deny. A roll call vote, please.
Dr. Strasser?
No.
Mrs. Waldron?
Yes.
Dr. Weaver?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
yes.
Mr. Harris?
No.
Mr. Hunt?
No.
Mr. Hosterman?
Yes.
So we had 4 yeses to, wait, 1, 2.
Forgot me.
Oh, sorry, Mrs. Rance.
That would be a yes.
Yes, okay. So 5, so 1, 2, 3, 5 yeses to 3 no's. So the motion passes.
Motion carries.
I will say, I think I don't think what you're asking is not important on the schedule, and we know that. And I think that is something Mr. Settler and I have talked about, the value of how do we make sure we connect with teachers on that. You know, it's a big step, and we know that. I think your point is valid, and we have to make sure it connects. And again, like a lot of these initiatives, year one and how we progress. Maybe I should have said, and just a reminder to anybody here, we are able to grant fund this initially. So while this is a cost, we're starting off the grant funding. So should it not work, we can work through that. Thank you.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay. Moving on to item 11, Personnel Committee, Dr. Weaver.
I'd like to make a motion for a block vote for items 11A up through and including 11A.
Yes, just for the board's reference, items 11C.2, 11J, and 11K were added since last committee meeting, just to point that out. Items that were added. Okay. We have a motion. Second.
Okay.
Motion second. Any questions or discussion? All right, roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Waldron?
Yes.
Dr. Weaver?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Hunt?
Yes.
Mrs. Rance?
Yes.
Dr. Strasser?
Yes.
Mr. Hosterman?
Yes. And just for the board's reference, those additional items brought to us. Usually we don't make a habit of adding items to the agenda after the agenda has been posted, but due to the situation of last week's meeting, we moved, and the ability to move forward with replacing some of these positions, we felt it was necessary to add that. So thank you for that. Anything else?
So 11A, looking at those of our staff that are retiring, always important to take note. Before I do that, I would be saddened if I did not, because I missed it 2 months. Mary Adams, who is the secretary at Bacher Elementary, is retiring. We approved her retirement, and I never commented on it. There are people that cannot be replaced. She is one of those individuals and will be greatly missed. While we are, we found someone that we are excited for, a new person. Mary Adams is an incredible human being, and it will be sorely missed. Also, with that said, looking at our other 3 resignations, retirements, Miss Gross was new to us. I did have a wonderful conversation with her about, she's just looking at different pathways in life beyond teaching. Mrs. Killian has been with us for 10 years, very impactful teacher. Got to know her a little bit and will be missed. But when you lose a Paula Cooper, changes your district. Paula is just an incredible human being that I've gotten to know over the past year and a half, one of the best we have. You know, when you are retiring with 36 years and nobody wants you to leave, tells you everything you need to know. It's so important, you know, we celebrate these people. We'll get a chance to celebrate them later, but tonight's also a night to celebrate the time and effort they've given us. And they will be sorely missed.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Moving on, item 12, legislative and policy, Dr. Strasser.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion for a block vote for 12A and 12B.
Second. Motion and a second. Questions or discussion? All those voice vote or roll call, please.
Dr. Weaver?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Hunt?
Yes.
Mrs. Rance?
Yes.
Dr. Strasser?
Yes.
Mrs. Waldron?
Yes.
Mr. Hosterman?
Yes.
Thank
you. CSIU 16 report, Dr. Weaver.
So this was a focus on board member appreciation. Also had Work Foundations present a cool gift to board members. And I will be sending out a lovely document to all of you regarding the general operating budget of CSIU. So you can learn a little bit more about that. So that will be in your email in the coming week.
We look forward to that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Weaver. We need a motion to accept that. No. Okay. Secretary's correspondence, Mr. Fink.
Thank you. This month we have 3 donations to share. The first being hygiene products and clothing that were donated to the middle school and high school nurses, and that donation was made by the Milton Rotary Club. The next donation was $500 from the St. Joseph Church to the Caring Fund. And then finally, Rodney Knoll, in memory of his brother Terry Lee Knoll, donated a 1930s era football helmet to the district. And that's everything I have for this month.
Thank you. Ask for a motion to accept grants and donations.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Let's vote for all in favor, signify aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on, Dr. Bickart, Superintendent's report.
Okay. So we'll start off with a heavy one. So we met this week. We have made the determination at this point, and I will be open to listen to the board. Graduation will be indoors this year. We are moving it indoors. I will be honest and tell you that from a perspective of those of us that were involved last year, it was cold, it was windy, the uncertainty of it all. I feel it is best option. Again, being honest, in the end, I have to make that call. And if I see one little blip on the radar after last year, I will bring it inside. I will also say being present 2 years ago and being present this past year, while it is a fun event outside, the solemnness, the importance of the event, I think is better indoors. So I want to see it, being honest, this year indoors versus what I saw last year. And just being honest, it's a very unpopular decision in my own home. So being honest, not from my son, not from anybody else, but it's just, that's life. But that's where we're at. That's the decision that we're at. And I recognize that might be a little polarizing. So we'll bring it up now so people can bring any comments and questions to us, and we're being upfront and honest. So there you have that. Number 2, 2024-2025 calendar. I'm going to give the board at this time a draft to consider. This is not at this time a public draft. We have had some discussion. Mr. Slusser and Mrs. Anderson are back there with the union. They have had some eyes on this. There is some similarities to last year's calendar. And again, we will go to vote on this in February. We typically bring this to vote in January, from my understanding. What we are looking at is an August 22nd start date. Why not the 15th, like it would be if you were considering it this year? We need every minute at Bacher, especially inside the Bacher kitchen. We've given them the ultimatum that by August 12th, 13th, they better have the kitchen done so we can then be making sure it's ready. But when you look at that calendar, it considers a lot of things. When you're looking at the color coding there, don't overthink it. It can get confusing. It's about numbers compared to the total quantity of days in yellow. The blue is our professional development schedule. You ready now? The green and the purple, there is a new House Bill, 1507, which is now Act 56 passed into law. This is a very important conversation to be had publicly as we move forward. That states 180 days of school or 900 elementary hours or 990 secondary hours. Change in the law there, it used to be and. You had to do both or exist. I want the board to begin thinking about this as we move forward and what does a calendar look like in the future? How do we consider that? How do we cautiously, if we do not, for instance, we have a snow day and we choose not to make that snow day up with students, but in working with the union in the contractual parameters, we look at a professional development model that comes in. So it's a bigger discussion. I want to point out to you that what it means, though, is when you get to that June and you see 1,016 elementary hours and 1,077 secondary hours, we're way above. So even with some adjustments and some shifts, we would still be meeting our hour requirement. Again, don't want to underestimate or undervalue the importance of instructional time with kids. We just talked about that. So it's a balancing act here, but it's something the board, we have some flexibility. We have some flexibility in what that looks like. So this calendar exists, just some things for the public. Continues to have the week at Thanksgiving. We found that very popular. We had a long discussion that January. We've heard from families that January 2nd is very nice. It's complicated this year because it falls on a Thursday. So what we did was we looked creatively. Can we have a professional development day on the 3rd? We bring our teachers back to get prep for the next year, but we're not bringing students back, but we're maximizing some of our time. So we tried to look at all of it. We tried to look at some making sure there's a long weekend here and there. Currently in this, there is no true, well, actually, I think we did add a snow makeup day or two. But what I'll ask the board to do is they are numbered. I just asked, I'm comfortable with you having them and looking them over as a board. We'll come back to this conversation in February. And now that I'm thinking about it, last year we posted a draft calendar before we approved. That was something I did. I will do that again this year. I don't have a problem with feedback. I know people get worried that there'll be tons of opinions, but very open to making sure, people see this. So if there's any questions I can answer now, I'd be glad to.
Yeah, I just have one. I remember last year we switched from going to full days from that full day off to the half day.
Yes.
I wondered how that went.
I think, well, I hear students love it. Students love having half days here and there. I think we have used those very, creatively when it comes to some of our trainings. And I have it on my next thing on my list is this Friday we have a half day. So as we progress at the elementary level and looking at curriculum for ELA, we're doing an hour and a half training with our staff on that allows us to get everybody together at the same time. So I think we would want to keep those in this option. I think along with, saying the PLC model and not having those times, we still need some time to do that in a modified schedule. So I haven't heard any negative about that. I'll go back and some more information on that, and we'll talk to some of the kids and some of the staff. But they are still built in there.
That's why I was curious how they were perceived.
You mentioned snow days being they're not up.
So one of the things I was thinking originally, I was not considering snow days. I was really thinking about the maximizing of this new act. However, I think it's a balance for our families. I think there can be a 1 to 2 snow day makeup, and then a maybe 1 to 2 that we can be planned for as a staff, that we could do some of those online trainings. I'm not ever going to say that we shouldn't consider the FID days that we have talked about. I'm not a huge fan, just being completely honest, not a major fan of those and how much we maximize instruction. However, God forbid you ever have a blizzard and you don't want to lose too much time. We have it in our wheelhouse to use, but it would be a last resort. And again, Mr. Slusser and I in the union have talked about that. So we're getting more options and that's what I believe the purpose of Act 56 is they're realizing we need some flexibility with teacher trainings a little bit and how creative we are, because there's so many mandates put on us for things like trainings that aren't our curriculum base, and we need that. So again, you have this. Take some time with it. Very open to some additional feedback that helped last year. When we made the change to the November having the week off. We talked about the January PD day, elementary staffing. We talked about secondary schedule. We put our elementary staffing survey out. We are getting that feedback. We are going to begin to look at that. I'm hopeful for our realignment, that our staff, we can give the majority of them some clarity by the beginning of March on where they will be. That gives them a couple months. I go back to, I would like to work with all of you in the next month on secondary schedule. Once we move past that on February 13th, we then can, begin a kind of step back with the elementary team and say, where are we at? We've had some time, we've digested the survey, and we'll work through it. I'm going to remind the public, we really made a conscious effort on our website to add the online calendar piece. You just click calendar and then it drops down. I was just back on that. Our events are there, our activities, our athletics, everything is there. So very quick way to get to things. So just continue to remind people of that. And last thing I want to ask the board to consider is you have beautiful new binders. And we consider having all of our board meetings in this room moving forward. And if there is a need to go somewhere else, we could plan for that. For instance, we may want to do one towards when Baca is finished at Baca. But I think we all recognize, unfortunately, there's not great acoustics at White Deer to have a meeting. It's hard to hear. If somebody wants to go to the middle school, they can walk over there from here, set up all of that. So I don't need an answer tonight, but I'd like to have that discussion moving forward from a scheduling, from an organizational standpoint of what that looks like. So if that's unpopular and we would like to continue moving, I will move to the will of the board on that. But binders will be a lot to move. No. All right, I'm done.
You've been moving, Chris.
Yeah.
It's true.
Practice.
Trying, mister.
This is just taking 3 years off my career.
I have a dream of making this like a formal board. Other things being able to
do. Have a hand card, don't you, Derek?
Yeah, right.
Whatever you want, I have. Just ask me.
Lost a hand card.
A believer in hard copies.
I have a motion to approve superintendent's report.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Any board comments this evening?
I'm just going to comment on what you just talked about. We meeting here then, next meeting, or are we going to where the schedule is?
Good point. I guess
wherever Brent.
Yeah.
We'll clarify by the next.
We can finalize that then.
I would say if any board members feel strongly either way, contact us, like either myself or so.
Good point.
Any other board?
I think it's a good idea, but if we consider keeping our meetings here, can we at least factor in potentially like the cycling through, just a walkthrough of the facilities, so that way we can at least get eyes on them?
I believe that used to happen.
Yep.
A walkthrough prior to the start of the year, at least.
I've seen some really neat things where you do like a lunch, like the board meets at a building and has lunch with kids on a certain day. You're more connected that way.
So we don't neglect them that we're not meeting.
Yeah.
Principals like to show off their buildings.
Better to go when kids are there.
All right, we have an opportunity at the end of the meeting to hear from visitors regarding non-agenda items. I have one request this evening. Mr. Brian Hunter. Brian, come out to the microphone. Brian would like to address us, make comment this evening regarding the Milton Jersey Shore basketball game. Just a reminder, Mr. Hunter.
Wow. Thanks, Brian. Just can you use the microphone so if anybody's online?
Sorry? I wouldn't want the superintendent. I want to have it down there. Thank you.
Just a reminder, Mr. Hunter, per policy of 3 minutes.
Yeah. I understand. I appreciate it. You ready for me to?
Sure. Whenever you're ready.
On January 10th, it was a game between Milton and Jersey Shore. Some altercation happened between two kids. When that altercation happened out, the parents was in the stand watching what's going on. While we parents and some residents that live in Milton was there, witnessed the game. We noticed Jersey Shore coach ran out the stand, ran to one of the Milton players, aggressively grabbed him, thrown him to the floor, as some lady from Jersey Shore touched the kid Isaiah. Me and Xavier Minim stepped out the crowd, helped his brother out. When I was doing so, this guy, I was going for a by my neck, talking to me the whole time. In the video, you can see Xavier Minim helping me, trying to get the guy off of me. The Jersey Shore police contact me, and I heard they reach out to Milton School District, and that's being heard is very sad and disappointing. Xavier was in charge. None of the visitors and no other Milton from PA was charged in his conduct, and this video was multiple people in this incident. I came out to stand as a parent because when that guy didn't come to separate, he came aggressively. You seen the video, pushed him down. Also, with this lady in Jersey Shore who's not being charged, who's supposed to put on his student. So I don't understand how I'm the only one being charged with disorderly conduct and nobody else. And in that video, you see many spectators. A lot of parents, there's a lot of people involved, and I understand why them people not charged. Someone reached out to me, and you know what they told me? Or the reason Xavier was in charge because he was protecting his brother. So if he was protecting his brother, what I was doing? You know, so I just want to let that story know that you were doing the same thing. I was doing the same thing. I'm let you know I didn't start nothing. I went to protect. In the video, you can see the cop went towards the guy to calm him down, never me. There's another clip you can show the coach still aggressive, trying to run towards me and all that. So there's a lot of stuff not being told correctly and proper. And it's frustrating that they contacted every parent, but not me. You understand? So that's why I appreciate you giving my time, but the story is not correct at all. If I'm being charged, every parent, even Xavier Minim, good kid, he need to be charged because you see him. Because when I was pulling him off, Xavier was pushing him. When that guy was choking me, Xavier was trying to get him off of me. I appreciate your time. Thank you. I'm sorry I sound like that, but the story was being sold is not correct, is not accurate, and it's very disappointing that nobody reached out to me. And I'm gonna come to the next school board meeting. Is the next agenda I want to talk on, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you for coming this evening.
I'm sorry I sound like that.
All right. With that, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Motion and second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. A good rest of January.